This is a 2008 Honda CRV EX-L. There's a loud whirring sound that's coming from the engine, particularly in this area. And at this point, led to believe that it is the alternator. There is not an issue with the battery or charging. This is a pretty new battery. It's within tolerance with the car sitting and with the car running, so that's not an issue. I did narrow it down to the alternator, but let me go ahead and see if the sound can be reproduced, and so far there hasn't been any issue with that. I have the new alternator, remanufactured, a serpentine belt. The car does have 145,000 miles on it on one belt. When this gets changed out, the belt will be changed out as well. As far as diagnosing, use the voltage meter, and then also use the vehicle stethoscope. These are the tools that I believe I'll need at this point, but I guarantee by the time I get done, I'll have about 15 to 20 more tools out here. Got my rags, some gloves, and some different ratchets. And I use this brass pipe with a lot of different projects for making an extension. I'm going to start by removing the negative battery terminal. Make sure it's out and away. In order to access the alternator, the power steering pump is going to have to be moved out of the way, and also the power steering reservoir is going to have to be moved out of the way. Try to do this without having to remove the hoses on the power steering reservoir, because I don't want to risk contaminating the fluid. The AC line being right where it is creates a little bit of an issue with being able to get to everything, that hopefully won't be too much of an issue. Alternator, which has one bolt up top and two underneath. I know there are different methods for doing this. One is you can jack the car up, remove the passenger side front wheel, and access it from underneath, or you can just do it from the top. In order to remove the bolts to the bracket that holds this, there is a clip right here that you have to lift up on, and that allows you to somewhat move the pump out of the way. And then you got to take these two bolts off. You could just remove these two 10mm bolts right here, but it's only going to remove this top portion, so I'm going to remove it from down in there so that it gets more of it up and out of the way. It's always good to have a magnetic extender so that you don't drop bolts or nuts down. They land on top of the splash guard underneath, and then you got to remove the splash guard just to get one bolt. So it's good to have this on hand. There is one more clip that has to be removed in order to get the power steering reservoir out, and that's this one right here. Just plastic clip that the bracket is locked onto. There you go. That's out of the way. In order to give myself just a little bit more maneuverability with once I move this pump out of the way, because unfortunately I can't remove or move this AC hose. There are two 12mm bolts, one here at the top, and then the other one is up underneath the pulley wheel right in there. So I'm going to take the bottom one off first and then take the top one off. got a little bit ahead of myself and forgot to mention taking the serpentine belt off. But I just used this modified wrench. It's an extra one I have, that 14 millimeter. I curved it so that I can get the right amount of leverage, and then I used this copper pipe to allow me to torque it towards the front of the car to remove the belt. When you're removing the power steering pump, taking the bottom one off is more difficult, but in order to make it easier to remove the bottom bolt, loosen up the top bolt and then finish removing the bottom bolt. Next is going to be removing the wiring harness on the front of the alternator, removing the 2 bolts that are down under there, the 1 bolt here, and then removing the negative battery terminal that's up underneath there. These are the 3 bolts that were removed from the alternator. These are the 2 on the bottom. This is the top bolt. The only thing left remaining to remove in order to get the alternator out is I remove the boot, the rubber boot that was on here. Now I just need to remove this nut to get this terminal off the alternator, and I can pull the alternator out.
Please like, comment, or subscribe. Thanks again.